Good morning, everybody. We have such a wonderful topic this morning that Robert is going to help us with, and in a different kind of format that should be really interesting for us to try. It's wonderful to see you all. And Katerina, you're going to read Robert's bio, and we're going to turn it right over to Robert and talk about friendship.
Yeah. Robert has been focusing for over 20 years. He trained with Mary Hendricks, Gendlin, Ann Weiser Cornell, and Robert Lee. After getting his certification as a focusing professional, he taught Focusing Introductory Evenings, a 9-month training through the Focusing Institute. And Robert has been working with individual. Focusing continues to inform his learning and practicing other awareness modalities, such as nonviolent communication, Marshall Rosenberg, transparent communication, Thomas Hübl. Currently, he is completing the 2-year mindfulness meditation teacher certification program with Jack Kornfield and Tara Brach. He has given webinars for Focusing International, and we know him well at Help for Helpers. Thank you, Robert.
Okay, so
it's nice to hear all those things about your history, Robert. Sometimes I think, we don't need the bio because we know, our people who come all the time, but we do need that, right? We need that history. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think also it's how the practice evolves. And I was just talking to Lynn before, and I said that my understanding of focusing was mostly, I guess, focused on myself, on my own development. And of course, it was all done with focusing partners and in groups. But as I'm thinking about the topic of friendship, and that's what I want to bring today, to have us look at the focusing practice itself more as a relational practice. And we all know about, or we've all heard about a loneliness crisis in our society. And a lot of people are looking for ways to have a supportive network of friends. And a lot of people don't know how to make friends. And from everything I'm reading, it's also for younger people much more difficult because our lifestyle, that's more in the digital world, and people interact less and less in person. And so I'm thinking, again, like reflecting on my own focusing practice, as some of my, or most of my long-term friends, it all comes from practicing focusing together. And again, I want to really put the emphasis on the relational aspect of focusing. So for me, a really big part of friendship is being there for each other. And what I mean with being there is also being present. And then it's also the way the focusing practice is structured. We're not only receiving support, we are also giving support. And in one of the podcasts I listened to, somebody said, that there was that he supported a friend of his who was going through a crisis, and he would like listen to her every day for, I don't know, weeks or months, and nothing changed for her until she found a role to give support to others. And as soon as she was able to give support to others, her whole whatever issues, problems, difficulties really shifted. So the first thing I would like to do with today together is look at our definition of friendship, of what being a friend, of who you want to be, what a friend means to you. Because for us, it's there are like thousands of books about leadership. There are thousands of books about intimate relationships, and not really much about friendships. I think it's much less defined. Like for some people, a friend is any nice person on the airport that they have no intention to see again. And for some people, it's really needs to be somebody they know for a long time. And then we also have very different, different ways of trusting or not trusting people. And I think that's also a big part of friendship. So I would like to do it a little different than what we usually do, which is to jump pretty quickly into breakout groups. And so I just like to leave maybe like 5 minutes if anybody has anything they would like to say that's coming up for them, and to what I just said. And then I'm going to do a little meditation, and then we go into breakout rooms to ask your meaning of friendship. So I'm open to hear if there's something there for you in response to what I just said.
Robert, how long will the breakout rooms go for?
Only 10 minutes.
Thank you.
3 minutes each. It's just for everyone to get a chance to explore or articulate their meaning of friendship, and then I think we can go into a very rich group discussion about it.
Robert, I appreciate your having said long-term and trust are elements of friendship, because that's very true for me. And I've also found that over the long term, usually there's some sort of dastardly thing that I think the person did or something that we disagreed about, but the friendship weathered that, and the friendship continued. So there can be some conflict or dissatisfaction, and yet the bond is strong enough that it continues over time.
Thank you.
When I touch into what friendship means, I think of all the different kinds of friendships, and they're all very different. And the circle of friendships, the very close ones, and the friendships that are still friendships, but they're out a bit on the on the periphery.
Yeah, I love that. Different kinds of friendships.
I think there might also be issues when you age, like just not having the energy or sometimes even desires to do some of the things that some friends, I was going to say former friends, would like. It's harder. Anyway.
No more tequila nights.
What?
They say no more tequila nights.
Right.
Okay, so let's do a little presencing meditation. And again, thinking of the beginning of my focusing practice. The first thing I learned was clearing a space. So I just invite you to, first get physically present, like really know where you are. Sitting on a chair. So know your surrounding. And then just ask, what's here for me right now? And it might be something about what we just talked about, but it might also be something else. And I think sometimes we have stuff going on that makes it difficult to just be with people, be with whatever the topic is we are talking about. So I just want to give that space. So anything that's here for you right now. And then see how that feels in your body, whatever that is. And then see if there's anything else that needs to be acknowledged. And then we narrow our focus to the topic of friendship. And see what comes up in you around that topic. And then again, how does that feel in your body? Like, what's the bodily felt sense when you think of friendship? And then feel your breath. Feel your body on the chair. And let's go into breakout groups. So the question is your meaning of friendship, and also knowing that meanings keep changing. So just ask, what is that right now? What's the meaning of friendship for you right now? Really what you can bodily connect to, some meaning about it right now. So it's just want to be sure everybody is clear and ready. And of course, there's no obligation to participate. But I really encourage you to take this time in a small group to speak what's there for you. And is there anything you need to ask before we do that, or anything not so clear? I want to pick up on that, and something that that became clear to me, like I didn't see it before, or in a way I didn't see it before, is that I think we really need to know that we want friendships and that they are important. And they really are. And something that happens for most people, if there's a conflict, let's say with an intimate partner or something at work, we have to deal with it. But with friends, it's really easy to just fade away. Like if things are not comfortable, or if there's a potential unpleasant experience to be had when we talk, just we don't say much. We just sort of don't call as much, or don't have time right now. And so a lot of friendships kind of fade out, or we just don't have we don't develop the supportive network of friends that we really need for our mental health.
Along with what you're saying, Robert, I think that it's so difficult for us to talk about the relationship itself. And I call that the talking about you and me. And we don't learn how to do that.
Right.
People don't do that. And it feels jarring to do that. And it's so difficult to have a friendship and not be able to talk about the you and me of the friendship, because then any little disappointments and any irrational desires or needs that we have, or all of those things, we don't know how to bring them up. We don't know how to talk about them. So then we get more and more accumulated unmet needs or disappointments or awkwardnesses or difficulties, until it's heavy and weighted with all of those things, and we haven't been able to clear them out.
But I think people talk about unmet needs in intimate relationships. I've never really heard much conversations about unmet needs in friendships.
Right. Right.
So I think that's also because it's not clearly defined, and I think even I think sometimes to really ask something from a friend, it almost feels like crossing boundaries, or it's not really clear what's appropriate or not in a friendship. Anyway, that's
right. And there's also the piece that if the friend doesn't feel present, to bring up, oh, you're not present for me, invites, you have a lot more going on in your life that's important to you, and I can't say anything about that because that would sound terrible. Like I want to keep you from it. So it puts you in a funny position, I think. Right. So what's coming up is, feeling like the needy one. Maybe we have to think about how various things we feel in friendships play back into former family relations, right?
That's a wonderful point, June. And I liked your bringing it into the feelings that come up that we don't know how to handle, feeling like the needy one, or on the other side, feeling like the burdened one, that more is needed from me than I can provide, or feeling like the naysayer, or feeling like the inadequate one compared to the other, or, so many different kinds of feelings that come up in friendship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I guess one thing I will bring up is, as you guys are saying this, is like, what if, for example, you went and said to somebody like, hey, I really would love to develop a deeper friendship with you. And this is what a deep friendship looks like in my world. Is that something you're interested in? And I guess, I think the thing about that is, like, relationships are so fluid. But if at least there's like an intention, then both parties will be more oriented towards these kind of conversations. And maybe at some point it's like, I don't feel a strong desire to be in close relationship with you, but I would like to be in friendship with you. I think those things are very awkward to say, but it's kind of like the transition from close friendship to like not as close friendship to like,
So how would you name the intention for a friendship?
What do you mean by that? How?
Well, for me, what came up in our triad was to actively intend to be of support.
I think the intention is there, but it needs to be like explicitly stated and expressed. Yeah. And so that I know the other person's equally as committed to this friendship. Because usually it's kind of feeling like I'm really committed, but I don't know if they are. And then that's really awkward and da-da-da-da. Like, right.
Abby, I was thinking of it as there's a generational thing. That, and not just generational, but kind of cultural or subcultural. Well, even before, when people were saying that in an intimate relationship, you're sort of allowed or invited to talk about it. But I think that's all over the world. That's not necessarily true. That if a woman wants to talk about what she's not getting from her man, that may not go over very well, or in our culture too. But as far as Abby, it just reminded me, it's a great idea to make the implicit explicit, but it reminds me just a little bit of people from younger generations who very explicitly ask permission to be sexual, like, may I kiss you? Yes, you may. And that, you kind of have to have these agreements before you do anything. And maybe, it's a great idea, but I think more in my generation and 1,000 times more in my mother's generation, you don't talk about any of that. So it's interesting kind of how it's, there's a lot of culture in there.
I'm going to push back because I know a lot of people your age that this is their norm. And it's a subculture, but they're American and they've lived this, they've taught this is their reality. So yeah, like I think in general, yes, but I think it's like, I also know people who are like in their 70s who've lived this for the past like 40, 50 years, They've just
who live what? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. People in their 70s who
have lived this out for the past 40, 50 years because they've chosen to do this, to make like clear containerships for relationships. Yeah.
You might know very evolved people.
Well, again, I think we don't have the equipment to talk about these things. We don't know how. One of the things that Gene gives us in his paper about sitting in, pouring out, and relating that I really love is that we can say something like, I'd like us to be deeper friends, and I want to know, if you would like that or something. And then ask the person, what did they hear? And just say what the person can receive, rather than saying everything and just having it land, and then the person has all this stuff. To just say part that the person can hear, and then hearing back how they feel about that, and then saying the next thing.
Well, that was also my inquiry. How does focusing and listening to each other help us be better friends? And I think also help us, of course, to even know what we want and need. And like what I said in the beginning, to really look at focusing as a relational practice, not just a focus on self-exploration. And so one I guess statement I would put out here is we need support. And then we can sort of all reflect on how our focusing partnerships or whatever other partnerships you have of this kind, how do they support you? And how do they teach you to give support to others?
One thing I don't know if other people feel is that I have lost some very long connections in friendships. People die, people age and they die. And I can make a big list of why
Your sound is breaking off. Okay, we lost.
Yes, maybe
but
turn
if
off.
I ask why were they my friend?
Okay,
Turn off your picture. Yeah, we might hear you better if you turn off your picture. Yes.
I'm saying that for 50 years of friendship, people die, and I can make long list of why they were my friend, but I never get to know why they chose me to be their friend.
Mm.
Can you hear me well? Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Ask your friends why they choose you to be their friend. When you have the chance to.
Well, maybe also ask yourself how were you able to support that person? What were you able to give to them with your presence, with your being with them?
That would be my view still. I want to hear from them.
Okay.
I want to hear from them. Yeah.
Okay. Somebody has the hand up. I don't see the name. Kim? No?
M.
Mary.
Mary, yeah.
Okay.
Mary.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to rename myself. So there is in me a desire to be a friend to others. At this time, it's hard to find a way to be a friend that's within my capacity and ease, within that window of ease for me.
Mm.
So, and also this idea of reciprocity or within friendships, and how can I at this time, when I'm debilitated and don't have my usual capacities. And so just touching on that for now. Yeah.
How would the perfect friend, what would that look like? How would somebody be with you right now?
Yeah, so what comes up is I want to also be a friend to the other, and what would serve them and be within ease and capacity for me. So that's just one of the strands. There's a whole bunch of other strands in there. So, yeah.
Can I respond, or I can't see if anybody else is raising their hand?
Go ahead.
Well, you bring up something, very important, and it also kind of connects to what I wanted to say before you started speaking, which is that the subject of this is about focusing and a sort of connection or interface between focusing and friendship. And it seems that, especially with our remote world, it might be easier to, it's sort of pared down what you have to give and what you can receive. That voice and maybe a face, and not even necessarily a face on the little rectangle, might be sufficient to have a very deep connection with people. By the same token, or on the other hand, I wanted to say all along that I have found in the past few years that I've been focusing that I've made some very deep connections, but it's also weird. There's something weird for me, different from my regular friends, that there's this thing where you go deep and you tell somebody whom you don't know very well some very important and intimate sometimes things about yourself, and yet you don't go to a coffee shop and schmooze with them. And it is a different way of relating that can, for me personally, can be confusing. I can think it's a friendship, but it's not, or maybe it is, or it's a different kind. Sometimes I have a term for it in my head, unearned intimacy, that you just plunge right in focusing. And then the other piece of it I want to bring in is that sometimes it feels like parallel play, the term used when very young children play alongside each other, but they're not really relating. So that I'm telling you all this stuff, and now it's your turn, and you're telling me all this stuff. And it seems like an intimate relationship or a friendship, but it isn't, or it is. It's this other weird thing that sometimes personally I can't figure out what it is, and that disturbs me.
I would call the weird thing the new thing.
But that's part of it, is that cleaning up. Because I'm a person who wants to say, it's weird. It feels weird to me. And I don't want it to be cleaned up, to be new.
Oh, I'm not.
I want to, be able to stay in the weird, if that's what it is for me, and not have to go to something, I don't want to be transformed into this loveliness.
Maybe I could add to that, Liz. For me, I really feel along with what you're saying, and I felt this quite often. And
I don't know if it's where maybe it's a new feeling. It's definitely a new experience, but what I don't want to take away from it, and what I hear you saying is like, I think there's a little bit of a discomfort, insecurity, discomfort, like, who are you to me? You know, like with this intensity of intimacy, and then who are you really? Why don't we see each other more? What holds me back? Like, I think of things like that, and like, am I afraid of destroying the intimacy? Well, that's why I say there's a certain insecurity underneath. Like, I want to preserve this special bubble of the focusing time where we go to such deep places. And I think there's a piece of me that doesn't want to disrupt that bubble. And it's a really interesting subject. I mean,
I agree. And I think, Dorothy, totally. And I also don't want it to get lost what I said about parallel play, because there's something there, not always. And when you get more into, people say focusing, and they mean all kinds of different things by that. And I find that the norm is more what is called a focusing conversation. That's my experience, rather than a very formal thing. But still, there's a quality sometimes of, I say mine, and now it's your turn, which is different from my friendships that don't have to do with focusing. There's more of a, I can't explain it. It's a felt sense, but it is more mushed, interactive together than, and real focusing, not the blurry focusing conversation situation where that gets more like a friendship, but something about focusing is mine and yours. But as Lynn was discussing earlier, you're never really talking about your relationship with the person. It almost feels like a taboo sometimes. They're there to listen and do this for you, and then you do this for them. But there's never about who are we to each other. It's rare. You have to really get more into something that's no longer focusing.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to bring back something M said that I think is really important, also as a base for everything we're talking about now, which is sort of the more difficult is. And it's feeling that desire to be a friend, feeling desire to be of support. And I think sometimes when we get into these difficult places, like this isn't working and I'm not getting this and I don't know about this and this is too complicated to talk about, I think it's good to just come back to that wanting to be a friend.
Hi, Robert and everyone. I'll jump in. I like that, the terms that we're familiar with, and then even just starting at that, the language is problem, because who are we? But we have skills, and we have knowing of what's the difference between showing up without commitment, without contracts, focusing are very clear with contracts and protocols, and we can, well, again, I can get into very immediate, safe places which happened in our breakout room, and it's that generosity of spirit and that graciousness and that sense of good enough in the moment, so that playfulness I really value, and around, I suppose, just what you said, Robert, it's like coming back towards that, well, then I can be friends with myself. If I get entangled or if I'm left with a felt sense that I'm not sure what happens there, I can check out. I can check it out with the other. How did that feel for you? Did I hurt you? Did I shame you? Whatever, so that's within this sort of a group, that there are common senses that go beyond what I might expect in an airport, so I just want to give this is definition. It's a definition of love. And I think it can something that I'm interested in, knowing how to, the skills. It's to produce security, pleasure, honesty, vulnerability and trust, and in giving in order to produce caring and intimacy, to reduce the fear of loss. So that's just some of the things that I'd certainly like to bring to, whether it's friendship, it's intimacy in relationships. So thanks.
So then there's you have your hand up, and then Winston put something in the chat, and I would love to hear from you what your challenges are.
Yeah, and also Laura.
Okay, thank you.
And also Natty, even though she took her hand down.
Okay, so I'm not very good in keeping track which hand went up first, but maybe somebody can help me with calling on people.
Natty's hand was
I think Natty go first.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First, I have to say something very strong happened to me when I was having my hand up and I saw other people having their hands up and somebody else jumped in. And that was quite upsetting to me. I have to say that because it really upset me.
No, I'm glad you're saying that. Thank you.
And I don't know. I don't feel like sharing now. I'm in another mood now. So that's all I want to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say that I probably jumped in? I saw your hand up and it's like, maybe we can decide on the protocols if we're hands up, but some is spontaneous. So that's one of the safety things that we couldn't decide, so I did see your hand up and I jumped in, and I'm sorry you feel like that now, but.
So I'm going to jump in, and I have my hand up. So.
Okay, thank you. Like I said, I'm not very good in keeping track of which hand went up first, so I'm sorry about that.
And just to say that if you put your hand up, the yellow hands will be seen before any other color hand.
Okay. Because
well, I want to say, I'm going to jump in and say that I have 2 screens full of people. So it would be impossible for me to see raised hands on screen 2 if I'm on screen 1. So I don't know about the rest of you.
No, Zoom puts the people with their hands up first. So we will see.
Okay.
I just learned that, Liz.
Mm-hmm.
So have we made a decision? Are we going to make a decision that that's sort of just some sort of courtesy that we'll do rather than jump in? I prefer spontaneity, frankly.
I want to hear from Laura.
Yes, please.
I wanted to say like a zillion things at different times. So I'll just go with the last thing, which was that there's I really appreciate having the little boxes of intimacy and the acceptance and the focusing attitude that brings. And yet there's also something very bodily about a friend shares a meal. Like if I can actually go to a coffee shop and talk to somebody, there's something there that's being satisfying, like my animal nature to be in somebody's presence. And then I also wanted to say that for me, my focusing partners and focusing community, I feel like we're on a bowling league. We just happen to enjoy this kind of activity of becoming really, thoughtful and turning inward. And I don't know, it just pleases me. Thank you.
I love that, some commonality that we detect in being with people and then lean more into that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my turn.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for...
Yeah, I'm about to say something Laura said. I think I used to think that maybe friendship is something that's formal. We make it very formal, two persons sitting together or sharing or having a number of years being friend. But I think sometimes friend can be a person that you meet on the street, or you have a very satisfying conversation with that person. So it came to me that friendship could be simply an exchange of maybe the quality of energy that you have with their person. Yeah. And I think we naturally connect with others in many different ways. Some people, they are just with you and you share some laughters with them. And some you share some parentings and children about, raising kids. And some people sharing of information, some you cried together. Yeah. I think there are many kinds of friends and we connect differently and naturally with different people.
Right. Right. So I think that's also a good way for a good reminder for us to reflect on the different kinds of friendships we have.
I guess in response to what Robert is asking, I do practice interactive focusing quite a bit. And the final stage of interactive focusing requires each person to say how they are different since they began focusing, that focusing session, how they're different with themselves, and how they're different with their partner. Because obviously, my focusing session would have changed me, and my partner's focusing session would have changed me as well. So it is quite an interesting thing to do, but it's quite challenging because I often don't want to put it in words. I've got all these feelings and sensations about myself and the partner, but I may not want to. Maybe there's no words to describe it often. It's such a kind of intimate or intricate session, and describing it is quite difficult sometimes.
Well, I'm wondering if it's difficult just because it is difficult, or if there's something you're not comfortable to say.
I mean, it's difficult because there are very few practices where this is done, right? So probably needs practice maybe, but interactive focusing, it's part of the practice, so you're kind of required to go along with it if you're following the protocol, that is.
Well, again, I'm thinking that there are sometimes feelings that may or may not be about the other person that we don't want to share because we don't want to upset somebody, or we think it might not be received openly.
Yes, that's true as well, because it's normally a long-term relationship that you're having with the other focuser. So there's limits to what you can say, I guess.
Right, because I could feel anger, and it might be something triggered by the other person, or it might be just something that, for whatever reason, is coming up in me right now. But then it would be it would be risky with some people to say that.
Yeah. There's definitely a risk to be too specific.
So I think that's for me another aspect of friendship, is how free do I feel to be honest? Or if I'm sort of in some kind of thinking what the other person might like or not like to hear.
True.
It might also, Robert and Winston, be around not knowing. You know, I might suspect that someone might be angry with me, or I might be totally wrong. You know, it could be an invasion of privacy. You know, so it's like really being careful not to assume that I know what's going on with the other. I haven't heard about interactive focusing for a long time, but I really know the potential of it's a whole sort of like nonviolent communication, but there's another dimension to it, you know, so it's nice to be reminded. Thank you.
So I see Michael's hand up, so I guess I'm getting better now in tracking the hands.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. What is coming up for me is was talking in the breakout room as a friendship. It's a boat. We're all traveling together, friends together, and everyone has something to do in order for the boat to go sailing. You know, it's and what comes out for me is, with all the conversation more and more, is it's something that happens with the least of effort. There's no effort. It just flows. Even when there's something, I've heard Feldenkrais practitioners saying it's a way also to learning to struggle well. You know, because life is not always a very nice flowing river, but also depends. Also, it made me feel that focusing helps me to be a friend to myself in presence of others.
Mm. Wow.
And that is kind of a way to learn where I am in presence of another person and see and feel if it's safe, if it feels the what we call friendship is happening. You know, for me, it's not something I need to think or to struggle about. It just seems natural. Otherwise, if it becomes something, I have two different friends I was talking about. One was totally in the heart, and the other person is so incredibly interested in having very specific behaviors for him to be happy, which is absolutely impossible to attain. So it's always working, you know, discussing how we should be rather than just be together. It's not working, and so it's like, what do we do with that? How do I feel? And if I'm able to share how I feel, I'm not able to sense that I'm being received, that there's no empathy or compassion, or even that a slight indication that the person is open and vulnerable to receive something that is not an accusation or criticism or anything like that. Because I believe in a way that nobody can hurt me. You know, it's my own reaction that hurts me.
Mm.
So everybody offers a stimulation, and my capacity to be with that stimulation is either empathy or reaction. And my reaction is a self-contraction. For me, I understand the mechanics of that. And that's the way I hurt myself. I cut myself. I close myself. And that closing of myself is something that I feel I would put the word hurt on. Mm-hmm. I'm doing that. Nobody's responsible for whatever happens inside me. But this being said, if I say something and my friend seems hurt, even though I'm not responsible for their reaction of hurt, I can have empathy and compassion to be with them then and say, what happened? You know, how is it for you? And go and see what that is. that could be for me a sign of friendship. But I cannot put myself in the position of being responsible if somebody says, you hurt me. I don't believe that's possible unless, they just give me a hit with a hammer on the head. That's another thing. But anyway, it is a very important, powerful conversation we're having. Thank you.
I was trying to put my hand up, but I don't see where to do it.
And we have about 3 more minutes, so maybe you're going to be the last one today.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say the other side of what Michael is saying, that it's wonderful when it's just flowing and we're just being together. But I find that sort of rare. I think that that risk-taking is a big part of friendship for me, taking little risks in the friendship and receiving other people's little risks of intimacy. And that the idea that it's supposed to just be, well, we're just friends, and there shouldn't be anything. Well, we're just focusing partners, so of course there shouldn't be anything problematic. I think that gets in my way. And when I think of interactions with people as also opportunities to grow, not just opportunities to relax and rest and be embraced, then I do better with them.
No, and I think just what Michael and what you just said is a really great lead-in. I have a sort of 6.5-minute poem from David Whyte about friendship, and I would like to play that now. And then there's still a couple of minutes if anybody has any closing comments or anything they want to say. So are we ready to hear that now? Yes. Okay.
Friendship. Friendship is the mirror to presence and a testament to forgiveness. Friendship not only helps us to see ourselves through another's eyes, but can be sustained over the years only with someone who has repeatedly forgiven us for our trespasses, as we must find it in ourselves to forgive them in turn. A friend knows our difficulties and shadows and remains in sight. A companion to our vulnerabilities more than our triumphs, when we are under the strange illusion that we do not need them. A friend knows our difficulties and shadows and remains in sight, a companion to our vulnerabilities more than our triumphs, when we are under the strange illusion that we do not need them. An undercurrent of real friendship is a blessing exactly because its elemental form is rediscovered again and again through understanding and mercy. All friendships of any length are based on a continued mutual forgiveness. Without tolerance and mercy, all friendships die. Without tolerance and mercy, all friendships die. In the course of the years, a close friendship will always reveal the shadow in the other as much as ourselves. To remain friends, we must know the other and their difficulties and even their sins and encourage the best in them, not through critique, but through addressing the better part of them, the leading creative edge of their incarnation, thus subtly discouraging what makes them smaller, less generous, less of themselves. Friendship is the great hidden transmuter of all relationships. It can transform a troubled marriage, make honorable a professional rivalry, make sense of heartbreak and unrequited love, and become the newly discovered ground for a mature parent-child relationship. The dynamic of friendship is almost always underestimated as a constant force in human life. A diminishing circle of friends is the first terrible diagnostic of a life in deep trouble, of overwork, of too much emphasis on a professional identity, of forgetting who will be there when our armored personalities run into the inevitable natural disasters and vulnerabilities found in even the most ordinary existence. Friendship transcends disappearance. An enduring friendship goes on after death. The exchange only transmuted by absence, the relationship advancing and maturing in a silent, internal, conversational way, even after one half of the bond has passed on. But no matter the medicinal virtues of being a true friend or sustaining a long, close relationship with another, the ultimate touchstone of friendship is not improvement, neither of the self nor of the other. The ultimate touchstone of friendship is witness, the privilege of having been seen by someone and the equal privilege of being granted the sight of the essence of another, to have walked with them and to have believed in them, and sometimes just to have accompanied them for however brief a span on a journey impossible to accomplish alone. But no matter the medicinal virtues of being a true friend or sustaining a long, close relationship with another, the ultimate touchstone of friendship is not improvement, neither of the self nor of the other. The ultimate touchstone of friendship is witness, the privilege of having been seen by someone and the equal privilege of being granted the sight of the essence of another, to have walked with them and to have believed in them, and sometimes just to have accompanied them for however brief a span on a journey impossible to accomplish alone. Friendship was begun after waking from a very, very realistic dream, a dream in which I'd been with a very, very close friend, a friend who had passed away. But in the dream, he was alive again, with all of the joy of discovering he was actually still alive. And we were in a car, and it was an open-top car, and we were driving across the Golden Gate Bridge, actually, with the sun going down on one side and the moon on the other. And we had our arms around each other's shoulders, and we were laughing and telling jokes. And we were also laughing about all the ways that we had consciously or unconsciously insulted and hurt each other over the years, and how we'd been good enough to forgive each other. And waking out of that dream and the joy of that dream and the forgiveness of that dream brought me to understand something of the essence of what it means to be a witness, and a forgiving witness at that, for a good friend. So, friendship in Consolations, the Solace, Nourishment, and Underlying Meaning of Everyday Words by David Whyte.
So what I like here is because I listened to this before, and I'm just noticing how much richer my experience of hearing this now is from what we did together the last hour. So if anyone has any, maybe not too long, shared or anything they want to say, we have another 5 minutes together.
I'm wondering if is Nati still here, if she would like to speak at this point.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gray. Thank you. But whatever I was going to share before is forgotten. So I'm sorry about that I forgot that. So something went in a different way. And I guess it was triggered a little bit by this conversation, this topic. I think that talking about friendship and focusing and how we are together and the caring and respect and so on. I was sensing into what happened to me and why I got upset about that. And something about that came to me. I really appreciate and value respect and caring and sometimes I know, of course, that in this Zoom thing, we can miss some things, raised hands and so on. But what happened, and I thank you all for that. I thank you, Pauline, too, for that and for saying that you were sorry, because in a way, it's helped me learn something more about myself and about how I relate to relations, focusing relationships and friendships. So that's all I can say. Everything is enriching in so many different and unexpected ways. So thank you, Robert, for bringing this, and thank you all.
Thank you for what you just shared. That's so beautiful. And I think it really sums up everything that I intended for us today, which is to really inspire all of us to look at friendships and how our focusing relationships are friendships, and really value that. And really such a great thing that we have here.
I love David Whyte's emphasis on forgiveness. And it seemed like we had an instance of friendship with the group sort of giving you space, Natty, and then Gray, you are asking just at the right moment, I thought, for Natty to speak, and Natty forgiving the group, in a sense, and that feeling of, some friendship was experienced by us, and we were able to talk about the you and me of the relational field here, of how we were relating to each other.
Yeah, and also if I think what Winston said, how are you now? I feel a lot of warmth in my chest, in my heart, that I didn't feel the same way before. So we can all just sort of feel how are we now? And how is that different than when we started? Okay, dear friends, again, my gratefulness for this exploration, my gratefulness for inviting me to present this topic, and best wishes in your continuous developing, nourishing friendships and making new friends, and just really valuing the tools we have already. I don't think we have to really learn anything new necessarily, but really use our deep listening, focusing skills, and find ways to be present for others and let them know how to be present with us.
Thank you very much, Robert. And just to remind people, there's a planning meeting at 10 o'clock, and the committee will meet, and anybody that wants to put in their 2 cents is always welcome to our planning meetings. See you next week, everybody.
Thank you, Lynn.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.